Ah, okay.
Oh, look what they did. They on the shutter dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, even in here, they put them in the holes here. I'm surprised that the squirrels don't get
Don't
it.
eat that? Ooh, especially the walnuts.
To prevent water. That gets off it.
Oh, look, there's peppers.
Yeah, there's everything. It's all sorts of. And look what they did. I mean, they took and put.
Limes, oranges, walnuts. I'm Steve.
I'm Nancy, and together we are living our dream. Our goal, to travel the U.S. and Canada.
While spreading the messages taught to us by our pets of
Keep smiling, be kind,
and be happy. Join us on our travels by subscribing to our channel as we continue our great adventure. Not sure what that's for, but
Somebody lost their glove.
I guess. That's unique. Pine cones and magnolia leaves. You know, kind of like this. You could do this sideways as well.
Wired match.
Yep, there's your garden cart. You've been wanting one.
Yep.
Don't even need a motor for it, huh?
Oh,
On our third and final day in Colonial Williamsburg, we visited a few more of the trades. We start with the Cabinetmaker and have an interesting discussion about women in businesses.
So to get the full round shape, you have to do it twice. You have to come at it from each side of the board. So this side and this side. So you have twice the opportunity to mess up.
We're restoring and reconstructing.
But for building like this, a lot of the trades are family based. And so what you're gonna find is, someone has 5 daughters. All right, hope that all 5 of my daughters start going into this business. Things
So-
in
so if-
property law.
So if you're in a family, 5 girls, and your parents pass on,
Yeah,
can it be passed on generation?
it depends.
Remember the law that Jefferson spoke about? Premature? Basically, it always went to the eldest son.
Right.
Primogeniture.
So
And sometimes if you don't have a son, but there's like a nephew involved, often the nephew is getting that default. So for women, often what happens when they inherit a business is it's from their late husband. And so what happens there too, that's also important, is let's say that you have a husband who has passed and you've inherited that business. If you decide to remarry, your new husband gets the business and you have to forfeit.
yeah, that's right. Jefferson was talking about
Yep.
that. That's how Jefferson got
So-
into such debt.
Quite a few of the women here in town who end up owning taverns stay widows. They do not remarry a second time. They remain widows and therefore in control of their own businesses.
Interesting.
So it's interesting you get women like Abigail Adams who became really keenly interested in this issue of women's property. And so she is trying to figure out her ways navigating this. One of the things she's particularly concerned with is that, her husband is very wealthy. Their children are basically provided for, but she has a lot of nieces and nephews who are not in as good a financial position. Can she dictate with the property that she owns how that should be divided amongst her nieces and nephews?
This is interesting. Now,
It's interesting which things we move on from and which things stay in place. When you see stuff like dental, though, this is made by making vertical saw cuts and then coming in with a chisel and just kind of cleaning it out.
Gosh, so tedious.
This board
That's gorgeous.
was made by drilling holes and then cleaning up with a chisel.
Okay.
And this was about a 40-hour board here. The whole mantle is closer to 150 hours of work. If it takes me forever right now, it's because I'm learning a whole bunch of things all at the same time and that it's worth taking that time. But with repetition, I will get better. I will get quicker. It won't be quite so bad in 7 years.
Yeah, I would think you're using a chisel on that peg. Is that
Yeah.
mostly what you use to get the peg?
Yeah, so we used a combination of saws. So I actually did a whole set of relief cuts here. That just made it easier to just scrape all that so you can still see I've got a little bit
Yep.
to clean out right there. And then came at the head right here with chisels as well. And so as I've gone around the head and the grain changes direction, I change which direction I'm coming at it with the chisel. And then same thing, it started out as a rectangular block, and so I just did a saw cut off and a saw cut off to like get rid of as much excess material.
Use sanding. Is that a thing?
Yes and no. So we have sandpaper in this period. However, the big sort of drawback to it is
Yeah.
that it's usually put on a kind of fabric. So like linen, for example, you have to have something to attach the grit to it, and that's usually done with hide glue. But the hide glue is heat sensitive, and so as you're rubbing it, there it goes. Heat and friction, it starts to detach. So a lot of times what we're using are planes that are just very finely tuned. And then we can come through with, if we need to, a rasp or a file. We also have just scrapers that are just
Thinking of this tiny little
yeah.
spaces, how to get in there and really
One of
get that
the
out.
things that helps us the most is that pieces like this are usually painted when they're done. And so paint hides many sins.
Yes.
Same thing, greens like this, they're made with copper. And it's copper treated with acetic acid. It draws out that green color instead of the orangey copper color. But it's very, very expensive. And so being able to show that off in your home is yet another signal of your status. Not only could you afford the super expensive cupboard, you could afford the super expensive paint. If we have something that's made and the museum doesn't.
Then we find out how the rich tended their garden.
Is that they dig a hole, put in bricks, so you've got a brick foundation, and then they build a box with the glass in it. Pretty cool.
They've had to actually open it up a little bit here.
One is using canvas
Yeah.
to protect it.
Well, they probably just cover it during the freezes,
Absolutely.
because these are herbs that might be growing in the winter.
Right. Here's how you have to.
Heavy stuff sinks down. One of the things.
I love the globes,
Yeah,
but that's obviously not going to be for most rural farmers.
that is correct. This is a gentry garden. This is a wealthy person's show-off garden.
Oh,
Average person is not going to have lettuce in December. No.
okay.
Okay. So these would have been imported from England in the 18th century. Imagine shipping glass like this
Yeah.
across the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh,
That
geez.
speaks of the cost.
Yeah.
French call these things cloches. I think the word cloche means bell in French.
But something more like that greenhouse style. Would that be more common, or is that still?
It has a completely different purpose. Glass in any form is expensive.
Yeah, I would
So
think.
you're looking at these beautiful houses in Colonial Williamsburg are rich people's property.
Yes.
Not anywhere near what the average person could afford. But once you get out in the countryside where the lower and middle class live, a lot of their houses don't even have windows yet.
Yeah.
And here we're having windows in a garden.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these three are called hotbeds, and their function is to allow us to start the garden early. That's another perk of wealth.
Yeah.
If you can have your garden functioning a month before somebody who doesn't have these, you're showing off. So you saw how deep they are. They're 20, over 2 feet deep.
Yeah.
In late winter, we go to one of our pastures and get a load of fresh horse manure for each
Oh,
one.
okay.
So picture filling them up with that much manure.
Wow.
Okay.
Just pure manure, not a mixture.
The fresher, the better. Okay.
Wow.
Because the purpose of the manure is nothing more than to throw off heat as it decomposes. You know, the
Yep.
decomposition, if you've ever had a compost
Oh,
pile,
yeah.
they steam. And so fill it up with fresh horse manure. On top of it, put maybe 5-6 inches of soil in order to sow seeds. And then you're trapping solar heat
Interesting.
those windows. So what we're doing there is creating an environment to start our seeds 4 to 6 weeks before we could do that outside.
Yeah.
Okay. So for instance, in the first one there, those peas that are growing in there, and that's a sickle pea, which is producing now, probably pretty soon will run out of gas, are growing in last February stuff. So that
Wow.
8+ feet of manure and soil, as it decomposed, has shrunk down to maybe 8-10 inches deep. That's what they're growing in now.
So I would imagine you can grow them the growing season a little longer as well.
But once those peas are done, We'll pull them out, and then we'll shovel that well-rotted compost that's been in there 10 months into different parts of the garden as a soil. Jefferson wrote in one of his diaries or whatever, his favorite vegetable that he grows all year long throughout the season is the early spring pea. He can't wait for that nice sweetness of the first peas of the spring.
Yeah, there's nothing.
And he prides himself in having the first peas in the area.
Oh, interesting.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's a contest. You come to his house, I've got peas already. Where are yours?
Purpose of the fire, is that just to keep warm, or is okay?
At one point, with what we just talked about there, once we do start planting our hotbeds,
Yeah.
we go through all of this work to create a warm, moist environment to start seeds, and then go pour cold water on it to, it doesn't make any sense.
Oh, so heat up the water.
Yeah.
Okay. And yes, they had cactus in the rich person's garden. Next, the weaver.
England does this whole system better, faster, and cheaper than I can, so I'm going to buy about 95% of my fabric from England.
So after the revolution, did we still import?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Treaty of Paris that dictates our independence also states that I'm legally required to buy British-made fabric only for the next 10 years.
Oh, really?
I happily sign it. England does it better, faster, cheaper. Raise your hand if you're an American.
Yeah.
We win the war. Everyone put your hands up. Better, faster, cheaper is kind of the end of the sales pitch here, isn't it? So we are going to start building our own textile industry, but it will take me generations to do so.
So we come from New Hampshire, in Massachusetts, where there are textile mills, but those didn't come up until mid
Lowell,
1800s.
Massachusetts, the one that's really famous that we all know about, opens its doors in 1821.
Okay.
So the problem we're going to run into is I need mechanization of the cotton industry before it's worthwhile. Why is New England going to build a cotton mill if no one in the South grows cotton yet? Yeah. Cotton is about 1/8 of an inch long, so with mechanization, that short, slick fiber is very easy to process. By hand, short and slick is my enemy. That's why I have this large wheel right here. Technologically speaking, it's 1,000 years older than the one that I'm using right here, but it produces about 6 times as much twist, which is what I need to get a short fiber bind together.
So what processing does have to be done to wool? Because you said it's a lot less intensive.
The hardest part is just catching the sheep. I mean, honestly. But once you shear it, it doesn't take very long at all. Good shear can shear a sheep in about less than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Then you've got two choices. You can spin it in the grease, or you can wash it beforehand. So it doesn't matter depending on the sheep breed. Some are greasier than others. Lamb's wool doesn't have a whole lot of grease in it, or lanolin, because they haven't hit puberty yet. So there's not a lot there. But then you do the same thing I'm doing with this cotton. You brush it out, get it going in one direction, then you spin it. And with cotton, you got to take seeds out.
Yeah.
So, in Jefferson's numbers, we've never been able really to get. He says it's 101 hours start to finish to get you the first yard of cloth.
For wool?
For cotton.
For cotton.
It's 13 for wool.
Wow.
If you've got really long fibers, it's better to comb it and you pull it through a small opening in what we call a diz. Use a part of a sheep's or a cow's horn. And you pull it through a hole and it forces it to become parallel.
Yep.
It makes slicker fiber. These are hackles.
Those are what?
Hackles. Don't get your hackles up.
Yeah.
And
From which end?
it is for flax and hemp.
Okay. All right.
And so you have a coarse, a medium, and a fine hackle. And it starts out with that bundle of hay on the wall. Don't you all decorate with bundles of hay on your wall?
Oh, yeah.
And that your flax has to go through a number of processes, and it's around 24 hours of handwork to get you that yard of cloth.
So he talked about wool and cotton. Did flax and linen start to be produced here?
From the beggar in the street to the king of England, it's a lot of linen.
Yeah.
Bed sheets.
No, but when was it produced here in America?
Oh, we're doing it.
Okay.
Some and hit and miss. But the majority of it is coming out of Ireland.
Okay.
And it's just more feasible to deal with, you know, imported stuff because it's better quality. And they've got this industry established because we don't have factories here because it's illegal to mass produce anything. Because you're here to support England as a colony, not compete with England. So there's no factories, no ironworks, no mining capabilities, no shipyards. Oh, right, no military. So let's fight England, shall we? So we had to get a bunch of allies to help us out with expertise and training and start building these resources for the infrastructure we needed. But it really doesn't kick in until the 1760s when they start talking about this idea of independence. The first knitting machine was 1589. But the knitters were oppressed by the weaving guild, so they didn't get uppity and take over a weaving business. So it's generally geared to just making stockings, not anything major like knitted fabric. So all my data that I program is string, and I organize it on 4 sticks. This is your app. This is where the program is to make a pattern. So now I got to tell the pattern what to do. So I don't have a keyboard. Now I got to use my feet. So I've got 1s and 0s. That's how programming happens. Mine's just up or down. So I'm working on these blankets for the military next door to the magazine. And this is not going to cover much. So you roll over something getting gold. So we have to put 2 panels side by side, stitched in the middle and hemmed at both ends. All right, so I've got some of the yarns up, some of the yarns down. I'm going to execute the command with a shuttle. Shuttlecocks are badminton. We got some yarn inside. I'm going to go over and under. Some of those threads, that's what weaving is, over something, under something. I got a result. All right, now it's decision time. How am I going to get it back over to my right hand without it coming out? Because if I send it through the same opening, it's coming out. I'm just going to switch places. Bottom and top are going to trade places by going over to the other 2 petals. Locking that first string in, and then you send it back. And then you start settling in, playing catch with yourself all day long, sun up to sundown, 6 days a week. So the expectation and what we've seen historically through the records is about a yard an hour, and on average. Most of us, a long time ago, aren't going to be making fancy silk brocades. We're not going to be making real fancy stuff. We're making functional stuff. You need bedding, you need diapers, you need kids' clothes, stuff that's going to be used, in your home if you've got open. But the interesting thing right now is that Jill and I are in the opposite positions. This is men's work, that's women's work.
Then on to the magazine, where they kept the guns, cannons, and gunpowder.
Those guns, go ahead, I'm sorry. Those guns there are what we would be using for demonstrations. The Fowler is a shotgun, so you could have many smaller bullets. You could have buck and ball in here. That means buckshot and ball. This is a commercial military bullet mold right here that we would be using now. Everything. Number one, this would be after, I don't know if you were here when I said this, after the Declaration of Independence, when you see this American uniform. When we're all British prior to 1775, everything in that building over there would have been imported from England, except the lead. So you and your wife could go to any gunsmith here in Williamsburg, get a carved stock, whatever you wanted, and then you would get your own bullet mold unique to that gun. But these are standardized. So if you look at some of those, you have a German Jaeger, which could be used for commercial use. It could be used for, commercial hunter. It could be used for citizen. It could be used for army. But everything would be in that building. The first floor you had your smith shop and your powder room. Second floor had all the weapons. Third floor you had all light items. But this is a reconstructed building. And it would be nothing more than a break room for 12 guards that guarded that during the French and Indian War. So you wouldn't see someone like me in this building because this is after 1776. This building was closed down and used for storage for the market house in 1763.
Watch for the next video in this Colonial Williamsburg series, where we visit a blacksmith, as well as the Capitol. As always, keep smiling and be kind.